Hey, what's up? This is Darius Rucker. You're listening to Everything Fab Four on Salon.com.
Welcome to Everything Fab Four, a podcast focused on fun and intelligent stories about the Beatles. I'm your host, Ken Womack, music culture columnist for Salon.com and a Beatles scholar and historian. No other band, or popular phenomenon for that matter, has enjoyed the global impact the Beatles have and continue to have more than 50 years later. They are part of our human fabric. They created music that continues to bring people together, and just about everyone has their own Beatles story to tell, some that are surprisingly deep and unexpected. This show seeks to draw those stories out in interesting and insightful ways. Remember, it's a Beatles world, and everyone has a story.
I know exactly where I was. I was living in New York City, had an apartment in New York, but I was in LA for work stuff. I was in a restaurant called Figaro's at the time, which was on Melrose Place, and someone said that he had been shot and he was dead. And I can't even talk. I was like, what? And I got on a red eye and I flew to New York, and stood in front of that building, and I was in Central Park for the 10 minutes of silence. It was just one of those things that just knocks you out.
Today's guest is Rosanna Arquette, an American actor, activist, and filmmaker. Rosanna Arquette was born into a show business family in New York City. She was the firstborn child of 5 and the third generation of the Arquette acting clan. Her grandfather Cliff played Charlie Weaver on The Jack Parr Show and was a regular on the original Hollywood Squares. Her father, character actor Louis Arquette, was well known as J.D. Pickett on The Waltons. Her siblings, Patricia, David, Alexis, and Richmond, all followed her into the family tradition as accomplished working actors. Rosanna began acting as a child while growing up in a bohemian atmosphere of gypsy-like travel and communes. Her mother, Marty, was a poet, political activist, and therapist who deeply influenced her daughter's compassionate worldview. Rosanna started working professionally as a teenager and has never stopped. She has appeared in over 70 films, which have earned over $450 million in domestic box office receipts. In addition to such early successes as the screen adaptation of Norman Mailer's The Executioner's Song and John Sayles' Baby It's You, she's appeared in such beloved films as Martin Scorsese's After Hours and Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction. Rosanna's vast experience in the world of film and television has inspired her to explore and expand her talent as a filmmaker into the realm of directing and producing, with 2 highly acclaimed documentaries, 2002's Searching for Debra Winger and 2005's All We're Saying. She is currently developing projects for both television and film through her company, Flower Child Productions. As a busy actress, filmmaker, and activist, her passion for her work is matched only by her passion for her daughter Zoe and her family. Welcome, Rosanna Arquette. I wonder if we could start by, I'm really curious about your family. So when you were growing up, were you an artistic family or?
That was our tattooed in our souls. Yes. Arquette artistic family. Yes. Definitely. My mother was a poet and an actress, and my father was an actor musician. My mother became a therapist before she died, and they're both unfortunately gone. But we lived a very, very bohemian, giving back. Definitely what you would call probably now, we were a super woke family in a good way.
Right.
In that we were, my mother was she worked in the Fred Hampton's Rainbow Kitchen in Chicago, was one of the organizers of the for many peace-ins against the Vietnam War, lots of love-ins and peace-ins in Lincoln Park, and was one of the organizers of, actually, Martin Luther King came to this march. Yeah, yeah. So I got to meet him when I think I was 6. I was young.
Oh my gosh.
In the back of a truck. I mean, I've told this story before, but it is funny. My mom, I had no shirt on, and my mother had painted on my bare chest, "Stop the war, kill no more." And I was in the back of a truck. He had no security. It was just his friends and everybody. And I was with him. My mom was like, here he is, the king. And he looked, he asked what my name was. And I told him, he goes, "Someone put a shirt on that little girl." That was my great meeting with Martin Luther King.
Oh, that's fantabulous. That's wonderful. How does this go from this bohemian lifestyle then to a world where folks are getting the acting bug?
Well, my father was an actor, so we grew up, and my mother was an acting teacher. So there was always theater, teach, poetry readings and theater people and activists. I know Abby Hoffman slept on our living room floor. Just like a lot of, we just grew up around the most extraordinary artists. And I was just recently revisiting, there was a great play that I love so much that my father was a part of in the second tier, but my godfather was Hamilton Camp, a musician, Gibson and Camp.
Yes.
Who is, a big influence of, I know that Neil Young really loved them. And being in coffee houses, like I was born in New York. We moved to Chicago where my sister Patricia was born. Then we went to Los Angeles, I think when I was like from 9 to 11, then moved to Virginia in a commune, which was an artist commune, with musicians and actors. But of course we had to deal with what was going on in that state, which was a lot of crazy racism, which I discovered very early on, in that when my first day of school, and I went onto the school bus and to go to my first day of school, and I didn't know anybody, so I went and sat with these nice kids. And when I got off, the bus driver leaned over to me and whispered, "You're just a little end lover, aren't you?" Because all the kids were Black, and so it was like, I was like, "What?" And I went home and told my mother. She lost her shit. It was, because so I didn't really love being there. I left earlier because once I went to middle school, it was just not good for me. And I went to and lived in New Jersey with the friends of my parents for a little while, just to get out of there, because the racism for me was just, ugh. And
that's post civil rights, right? I mean, this is
yes, full on. I mean, I remember I was there when, I guess we moved there. I remember Janis Joplin had died, or Jimmy. Was it Jimmy? Or they were around the same time, pretty much, weren't they?
1970-ish.
Yeah. So I do remember. I remember my mom being really upset about that. So music was always around us. I have my dad's conga drums here. I have I have guitars because I have a lot of musician friends. And Sabine, who's a French artist, musician. She was just here the other day playing piano. I have 2 pianos, and it's like, even though I'm not playing, I just have a lot of friends who are musicians, great friends, and some of them big rock stars. And I've always gravitated to people who are in the music, and it makes me feel safe. And it makes me feel safe is the truth. But I used to shoot the backstage interviews for Coachella for about 6 years. So I got some extraordinary interviews, which I wish they would let me cut together, but we never did that. They made a Coachella movie and they kind of talk about me doing that, but I never got to cut the interviews together, which I would love to do, because I have everybody. And nobody said no, which was really nice. There was all these competing, crews of interviewers that wanted to interview people for Coachella, so there was probably about 4 or 5 crews, but I was always like, and there would be kind of this funny competition, but I really did get everybody. Just no one said no. And I said, you're never going to get Lauryn Hill. You're never going to get Lauryn Hill. And so it was like, there was a sound check the night before and it's like empty. And there's Lauryn Hill walking across the lawn. I went, hi. And, I just said, hey, and she was like, yeah, sure. Like, no problem. It was great. Yeah. And Paul McCartney, Sir Paul is a friend of mine, his family and everybody. And I got a great interview with him and Amy Winehouse for a minute. They're kind of like little fast. They're not sit down 45 minutes like this. They're like, 3 minutes, but cool.
Your career, even a glance, a person can tell that music has always been interrelated with everything you do. What are your earliest memories of the music that you love that made you feel safe?
Okay, well, I grew up with the Beatles. I'm not like, if I'm feeling really like in a funk, like it was a really huge move to move my whole life, in 40 years of storage, which I like had gone through, but it was like, then it's still like you unpack this stuff. It's like, what am I ever going to do with this stuff? It's like a huge, huge career of stuff and movies and different decades of life and experiences and relationships and journals. It's just like, what? Which I've just kind of unpacked and gotten it together now. And this was April 19th, so it's just really new. And, but it was huge. And I just really felt like I needed to change my life and not live in the town. It's a work town for me. I love LA. So my great friends are there. I go back often, but I don't need to live there day to day. And that was just a choice that I needed to get away from. It's just changed a lot for me. And but I'll always love, I love my friends and I love the ocean and I love to be there. But I just needed to change my life.
With the music, so it's the Beatles.
Also with music.
Yeah,
so the Beatles growing up, I'm just like going on and on.
No.
I'm ADD, so you got to like keep me on track. Otherwise, I'm gonna and I'm not a medicated ADD person. I'm just ADD, and most of the creative people I know are super ADD. Music was always around me, and the Beatles, like for sure, were a big part of me. My growing up. Joni Mitchell, we love Joni, Laura Nyro. My favorite, it just how I grew up was around rock and roll and folk music.
When did you discover the Beatles? Do you have like an early memory of when they entered your atmosphere?
Yes, I have a great memory. I remember I was hard to be. I mean, even at 5, I would, sit and first I remember, Revolver. I always loved Revolver. So when I was 5 years old, it was Sergeant Pepper. And I remember Sergeant Pepper and just I know it by heart, listening to it that time. And then I had another obsession with at 9. It was Revolver, which is I think my favorite Beatle album. I love Revolver. If I had to pick one favorite Beatles song in life, it's Tomorrow Never Knows.
Wow, that's fantastic. Aren't you glad you don't have to choose though?
Yeah, and then it's just something about it brings you back. It's healing. They're just amazing. And I've been watching this documentary on John Lennon that's out there right now. I think it was made a couple years about all the craziness when he passed and when he was murdered, which I had never seen.
God, that's still horrible, isn't it? Do you remember where you were?
I know exactly where I was. I was living in New York City, had an apartment in New York, but I was in LA for work stuff. I was in a restaurant called Figaro's at the time, which was on Melrose Place, and someone said that he had been shot and he was dead. And I can't even talk. I was like, what? And I got on a red eye and I flew to New York, and stood in front of that building. And I was in Central Park for the 10 minutes of silence. it was just one of those things that just knocks you out, that was such a part of he was so vital and alive. And I remember really young seeing John and Yoko walking on the streets together. And I just had to go over. I mean, I know I've knew Ringo, George, and Sir Paul, but and Yoko's in a music documentary I directed. She did Come Call All We Are Saying.
Yeah, which is excellent. It's I show it in class.
Oh God, that's so cool! I love that.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
I love hearing that so much because I heard that I did another one called Searching with Debra Winger about actors, and they show it at colleges show it, and I think that's so cool. Thank you so much. That means a lot.
You got it. The footage
that means more to me than anything is that it's being shown in college. I love that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for making it. I mean, so did you go say hi to John and Yoko?
I did. And Yoko hugged me and she goes, "Have a nice life." It's like, and then I did interview her later in life. She was wearing a Milk and Honey jacket.
Oh yeah. I remember when that came out too. That was so heartbreaking. It was like our hearts were broken all again 4 years later with those releases.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but Milk and Honey must have been something to them before that because he was there.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that was, but she had a jacket and it was before that. So I don't know.
Yeah. I did do some research on the etymology of where they came up with that and what that meant to them. And of course, I'm blanking on it now when I need it the most.
Probably in their tea.
Yeah, that would do it.
Just their tea time or what?
And they definitely had that as their next album, always.
Yeah, and Sean's in my documentary too. Sean.
Right.
Yeah. They're also talented. I should have Jules in there. I love Julian is my friend of mine, and he's very, very talented and so wonderful. He was like in Ez or something. I couldn't get in touch with him at the time. But
so you grow up with a wonderful life of music.
Yeah.
And
actors. And so recently my father was in a show called Story Theater, which was a Paul Sills, Viola Spolin is a creator of the improvisation of the theater is her, and she created the theater games. Mm-hmm. And her son was Paul Sills, and they had a show called Story Theater, which was rock and roll fables, which I'd love to revive, which I'm kind of working on with for the future with the family, his Paul Sills family, and the music of George Harrison, Bob Dylan, and it was such a magical experience growing up. And I was 11, I think, because we lived in Virginia. My parents were doing the show. My godfather was in the first tier. My father was understudy and then did the second season of it. And we lived in the Chelsea Hotel, when I go visit my dad, which was so cool. And literally I was like, I would love to make a movie of this because it was like Eloise in the Plaza, but it was like, Rosanna in the Chelsea. I wish I could say, because it is the same time that Patty was there, with Maplethorpe, when they're in that time, like when everything was going on. And I don't remember, I honestly don't remember, that stuff. I was just, you're just surrounded by, now they've really redone it and made it really incredible. But
as restaurants, it's almost like a tourist destination.
It's a little, they made it a little, but it's still, it's nice because it was funky then, it was like, it wouldn't be, it was intense. Yeah.
What would you say, did your first big break occur then when you were in the Jersey part of those early years?
When
would
my big break?
Yeah. What was the big moment?
I went back to LA. I was in LA I've been back, I'm always back and forth. And I also lived in Europe for a while, and I lived in Paris and London for a long time. My daughter's kind of following my footsteps. Well, no, she's not following. She has her own, boy, does she have her own thing. And she would hate that I said that, but she's living in Paris.
I'll edit that out.
She's starring in a huge movie. She's starring in New Dracula. So pretty cool. What was
that first big break? I remember the Executioner song, but that may not.
Before that, I would say, I mean, I did a couple things. I did an after school, ABC after school special called Mom and Dad Can't Hear Me. And then that led to James at 15, where I played a teenage alcoholic. And then that led to maybe was it the other way around? Gosh, maybe it was first. Betty Davis, I don't remember the dates, but Betty Davis, in Dark Secret, A Harvest Home, and Leo Penn, who's Sean Penn's father, directed that.
I will never forget the after school specials because they were like these cautionary tales. You know, you come home, you're finally done with the school day, and now you're getting taught some really hardcore lesson about some wayward teen or, you know, some tragedy. And, you know, and then you have to try to get up and go do it all again the next day.
Yeah.
Those were crazy times.
Yeah, they were. I mean, I met, so I met Steven Spielberg because Priscilla Pointer was Amy Irving's mother. And so he brought me in, and I actually met him for Indiana Jones, but I was way too young. I looked, because I always looked, you know, I was 18, but it looked like I could play 13, 14, you know? So that was kind of a blessing in those days, you know?
Yeah. And then, so, I mean, would you say that sort of the breakout moment was the Executioner song?
So then I did the Executioner song and this movie, a John Sayles film called Baby It's You.
Yeah.
It kind of came out around the same time, and they were, you know, very different. So I think that was good. And then that led to, I did what Scorsese wanted me to do, After Hours,
which I adore and watch periodically. Can you tell me about that? It's one of my great, you know, guilty pleasures. It's like the Beatles, right? I like to know that I'm in a world where After Hours exists and I can just turn that on and go into that crazy place for a while.
Well, what really happened was I did a movie called The Wall about the Jews in the Warsaw Ghetto in Poland, and it was a 4-hour miniseries, and I met Griffin Dunn on that movie, who played my brother. So it was Eli Wallach and Tom Conti and Lisa Eichhorn and Diane Wiest. We just had such an amazing time because we were like, you know, just us and these actors, and the time where the Olympics were going on and there was no food. It was crazy. It was so crazy. And I became great friends with Griffin Dunn, and we're still great friends. I just was last week or the week before for his book opening. He's a great, great director. And so he produced Baby It's You. I mean, he was already a producer and had made movies, and as a producer, and then Baby It's You happened. So they sent it to me, and I met with John Sayles, and then I ended up getting it.
And so then you find yourself in the world of After Hours. What was that set like?
Oh, so great. It's one of my great experiences working. Well, first of all, Marty at the time a lot of things were falling apart for him. So this was kind of a great, you know, he was this incredible director, but he was having a shitty time. And so this movie revived him in a huge, huge way. And it was like, it really brought him back in such a great way. So that was so great of Amy and Griffin to get that, because at one point it was going to be, the director was going to be, oh my gosh, hello, Beetlejuice guy.
Oh, yeah, the fellow who did
Tim Burton.
Thank you.
Yeah, Tim Burton was going to do it, and then when he heard that Marty loved it and read it, he backed out. He went, "Oh, please let Martin Scorsese direct that movie," and that was cool because I think it lives forever. I mean, Catherine O'Hara. I mean, you look at these people. John Hurd is in there. He's no longer with us. He was a great friend of mine and my roommate when I was living in New York. I lived at his apartment while I was doing Baby It's You, and while I was when I found out about Sean being murdered.
And then Terry Garr.
Terry, I love Terry, who's also in my documentary, Searching for Debra Winger.
So many incredible, all these personalities in that film really driving it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that movie. I mean, I don't really watch my films or my work. So a lot of, like, not to say I haven't seen it, but I mean, I didn't see Desperately Seeking Susan. I saw Rough Cut in the very beginning. I did go in a packed theater and stood behind, and just heard the audience reaction for a couple scenes, got out. I never really saw it for years. And then same with Pulp Fiction. I was pregnant with my daughter, and like when it came out, and was like a huge success. And it was so violent for me. Like I was holding my baby, and my mom was just so distraught. We both said, she goes, this is not good for the baby. And I felt it. So we left, and I never ever saw it until recently. They just they had their big anniversary for it in LA, and they had a Johnny Ramone tribute, because Johnny was a friend of mine. I'm really good friends with Linda. So John threw another screening for it a couple weeks ago, which I was back in LA for that.
How did you like it now that you've seen it?
I mean, it's
years later.
It's great. I mean, I could definitely do without the N word so much. That I was like thinking enough of that. But other than that,
and your part kind of exists in this little oasis outside of the violence, right?
Yes, thank God. Yeah,
it's you and
it's Eric Stoltz.
Yes, you and Eric Stoltz, and you're sort of off in this house.
And a wonderful. Oh my gosh. Sorry, this is what happens years later in your brain. It's so terrible, and I feel terrible.
Don't you revive? You're with Travolta when you guys revive Uma Thurman. It seems like you're often tapped to play these wonderfully quirky characters. Is that reasonable to say? Pulp Fiction, After Hours.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess I have played a lot of quirky stuff, but I'm, starting to grow up now, so hopefully.
Well, I love it. I think they're wonderful roles, because they're the folks that when we look back on a film or an experience like that, we can relate to. I can relate to your character, being stuck in that house all day, with Eric Stoltz, et cetera. It's, I think it's a gift. Or in After Hours, right? Your role in After Hours, you're this kind of every woman who shows up in one of Griffin Dunn's adventures.
Yes.
Those crazy journeys of his that night.
I was really excited that, because I love the Criterion Channel. I mean, it's probably the only thing I just watched. It's just so fantastic. And I just love it. I'd love to curate for them sometime, but they have really great movies, and they finally have like After Hours and Criterion, which is so cool. And I recently, I did a movie years ago with David Bowie called The Linguini Incident. And that got kind of lost. It was just lost. They couldn't find the director, who was 25 at the time, was a bad producer, and he ran off with the money. And then the print, no one could find the negative of it. And so he kind of for years did this deep dive and found a print in Germany and was able to revive it. And so recently I was just in New York and saw that, and it's like, it still holds up. It's funny. I mean, talk about quirky. But,
sounds like
we're talking about quirky. It's called The Linguini Incident, and it's coming out in Blu-ray, whatever, all that stuff.
Sounds like that's almost the plot of a great movie itself, is the losing of this print. It sounds like Phil Spector in the mid-'70s with John Lennon's rock and roll album, right?
Oh, gosh.
Do you plan to do more directing?
It's interesting you're saying that. I do have something that I'd like to direct. I just co-wrote a pilot that's funny. And I kind of feel like having some laugh. I was going to maybe go off and do a film, but it ended up not working out, which is actually kind of perfect, because I think I just need this time to get my bearings in this new place. And then, I feel like September is going to be good to go to work.
That sounds like a good time for it.
Yeah, just taking the summer, taking some time, taking some breathing space.
What do you think it is, going back to music for a moment, about that period? You know, the photos, you know, the lovely portraits on your wall, right? That period of the rock era that people, even my students today, keep coming back to. What made that so different? I think we'll be talking about it someday like it's the Renaissance, you know, with all these great records, you know, Dark Side of the Moon, Abbey Road.
Oh. Well,
right?
Have you ever watched Wizard of Oz and the Dark Side of the Moon?
I have done it, yeah. So what do you think? I mean, what do you think about that period? You lived it day to day.
It's when music, I think what people they were really writing about something. I mean, the bands like the times about war, it was much more poetic. Words meant something. The lyrics meant something. And that, you know, it's few and far between these days. I'm a big Radiohead fan, though. I love Radiohead.
Right back at you. Yeah.
Just my favorite band that's come along for years. And they're friends. I do know Tom. I have a great picture of Tom behind me.
Computer will last across the centuries. What a record.
But I love Kid A. I mean, all of their records, but the last record they did, and The Smile is really great too, that, you know, Johnny and
band. Yeah.
Yeah. But A Moon-Shaped Pool, that's an incredible record.
Oh, Burn the Witch is fun. And
just all those songs. I mean, it's gorgeous about the.
What about the ecological crisis?
Yes.
The Numbers.
Yes, The Numbers.
What a tune.
Isn't it amazing?
Yeah. And, you know,
I think that's like a masterpiece. I mean, all of them. I love, there's not one Radiohead record that I don't love.
It's interesting that we segued to them because they really, in a lot of ways, are the godchildren of the rock era, right? They've got drama, they have incredible lyrics, et cetera, et cetera. You know, there's an energy and a power in their music that is, I can't wait for more.
I remember going to there was a big Grammy party, and I was friends with Tom, and so I got invited to this big Radiohead party, and Paul was there with Nancy. Paul McCartney and Nancy were there, and Catherine Keener. And it was like this great, I just remember just the feeling of just all these artists in a room together celebrating, you know, each other. And it was such a good vibe.
Knowing Paul, for example, as you do you know if he ever gets to think back about the rock era that we just described and you got to watch in its infancy? Does he ever think back, and all the way to Taylor, right?
He respects all the musicians. Of course, every musician loves him because he's, you know, Paul McCartney of the Beatles. And, you know, I got to say, this is really the truth. And I just know him as we're just friends. I know his family. And, but I don't hang out with him. But I did run into him and Nancy recently, and that was so lovely. But he everybody, he appreciates, as Bowie did too, young bands, young other people coming up. He appreciates them, and everybody looks up to those kind of guys. And then but he knows young artists and loves to work with young artists. I mean, look what he's done with Dave Grohl. You know, well, he's not young anymore, Dave Grohl, but I guess he is.
He's younger than Paul.
yeah, that's for sure. But yeah, I like that, and shepherding other people too. You know.
Everything Fab Four is presented by Salon.com, the premier news, politics, innovation, and arts website. For more information, visit everythingfab4.com, where you can learn more about our podcast and my latest Beatles-related book, Living the Beatles Legend, The Untold Story of Mal Evans. The Everything Fab Four theme song, Seize the Day, is provided courtesy of Black Rabbit, the high-octane Beatles cover band, an innovative psychedelic rock project from Rockaway Beach, Queens in New York City. Like what you heard today on Everything Fab Four? Be sure to subscribe, give us a rating, and recommend the show to your friends. Plus, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter at EF4 Podcast. Distributed by Salon.com, Everything Fab Four is a Wonderwall production. Remember, it's a Beatles world, and everyone has a story.